Justice on trial. Justice Jector Ojwang to face tribunal following allegations of graft. Some Supreme Court judges fighting serious accusations. In total, 61 complaints against judges, while 75 target magistrates. 6 petitions against top judges as well. Some bribery claims filed in the past 2 weeks. And that's where we need to start. On page 5 of the Standard, actually, Gidongo also says there are graft lords who've captured the state. And on page 4, looters to face life in jail. And a new bill, that is a new bill that is being proposed to have people sentenced to a minimum of 10 years for graft convictions with no upper limit. This is a conversation we want to have, and I'd like to hear my guests and their views on this. Justice on trial. And Governor, I'll start with you. What does this mean for a nation when the people expected to dispense justice are the ones being accused of lack of integrity? At this point, they're just accusations, but what does that mean for the judicial system? Does it erode the confidence?
You're very correct that those of us who expect justice usually run to courts. Yeah. Now, if some of the judges are found to be capable, then that is a worrying trend. But we all know that many times corruption fight back. And we can summarily simply indicate to all of us that all the judges are corrupt. We need to be more specific. And when we are dispensing justice, it is on an individual basis, not in a wholesome manner. We know there are corrupt judges. There are, because some have been convicted. But let the due process take effect.
But you think sometimes this is corruption fighting back?
But yeah, you can simply say, because you cannot summarily indicate that the whole of them. Yeah. We would wish that they actually be specific. Let each judge take his or her own cross. Okay. So whenever we are talking about dispensing justice, it should be to an individual, not an institution. Yes. All right.
Honorable Kipruto, just do you feel as if there's a sense of seriousness that is coming from the judiciary when it comes to them as an arm of government also putting their voice in the fight against corruption, or do they need to do more?
Well, I think the judiciary has done very well. But I see 2 things in this. One is a reflection of our society. If we are corrupt as Kenyans, you don't expect judges to come from the moon or to be angels. Therefore, they are a sample of what we are. And whatever is happening to them is something, as the governor said, let us go through the due process. Those who will be found guilty of committing those crimes, let them be dealt with as individuals. But we do not expect the bench to be so clean, because these are people who live among us. And therefore, if we are corrupt as Kenyans generally, you do expect that they are also going to be involved. Number 2, I think the government has upped their skills towards fighting corruption. And whatever Kenyans are doing, accusing these judges, may be part of that awareness that there is somewhere you can run to ensure that whoever does not give you the due service that you expect from the the judiciary can also be accused of, because you've seen some lawyers have been raising some certain concerns about their clients who they feel they have not been treated well, and they feel there is some hand activity. So without going into the details of the cases, you realize this is what people do ordinarily. It would have passed in the, let's say, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. But now that we have focused on fighting corruption as a nation, therefore they are also they are on focus, because, and I think for the right reasons, because once you clean the bench, then those of us who want to seek justice will find there is a clean bench that can dispense justice.
Right. Would you want to see the 3 arms of government, judiciary, the executive and the legislative, working a bit more and complementing each other a bit more when it comes to the fight of corruption? Or do you feel like all the 3 arms of government are fighting an independent fight?
Well, I think there is more synergy that can be gotten from the 3 arms of government. There is more synergy, but the main challenge has been we are pigeonholing corruption, and at times we are giving faces of individuals, and at times we are politicizing in a way that it almost becomes commonplace that certain individuals have been accused, and yet we don't go to the bottom of it. Without naming an institution, there is an institution within the parastatals that we have, where certain procurement was done irregularly, and the two CEOs that have now been put on trial were not in that particular organization, or they were not holding positions of procurement at the time that procurement was done. And yet, whoever was the CEO at the time is now within the same ministry at a higher level than the two individuals who have now been, who are now on trial. Now, it begs the question, are we convicting somebody just because it is convenient that he's holding that particular office? Or are we supposed to go to the bottom of it? When this procurement was done, was so and so here, and therefore who was culpable? Is it the person who was there, or the people who are now there? So these are some of the things that the faster we move on the fight against corruption, the better it is for the country. So that we have convictions, and upon convictions, we recover the assets that have been stolen by the individuals, and we put this matter to rest. Otherwise, the more we seem to be clouding it with a lot of names being thrown almost every Friday, there are names to be thrown to the media. The more we delay, the more we are making the whole thing to be clouded, and as the governor said, we might actually imagine corruption is fighting back. So that there is no end to this. We must bring it to an end.
Harriet, what do you make of it? Is this a reflection of who we are as a society? As a Kenyan, from where you sit and you see this happening on the dailies every day, do you have confidence in the judicial system?
Well, thank you for the question. As a Kenyan, an ordinary Kenyan, not a politician, not
not a governor.
Not a governor. I feel that one, there is need to clean the judicial system so that it brings back the confidence. And like the other panelists have said, many times we have this news that this must have happened, was not right. The judiciary has been accused of corruption. Cases have been determined, and we still have murmurings on the ground. And so it's time to just clear them, vet them, find out those who are culpable, deal with them. Those that are clean, give them a clean bill of rights. And then as citizens, we will have the confidence, knowing that we have the right people, not people who are being accused.
Is that process taking too long in your view, though?
Well, it depends, because we might expect it to take longer, to take shorter. But sometimes if we do it in a rush, then we might not give the accused the time and the time that they need, and we might not do it the right way. Yes, so we expect it to be faster than it has been, but not as fast, because we need to give time and do the proper due diligence.
Governor, is it taking too long?
Yes, but now it's going to a wrong direction now. If in Kenya now we are looking on to where we get justice, because the Supreme now court is under watch. And I want to really indicate to all of us that the public should also be there. It's not only the three arms. Even us, the public, should come on board in the fight against corruption. We need all of us. If it has gone to the Supreme Court, this is worrying. This is worrying. So is it in the vetting process? Is it in the identification in the early stages of who actually should sit in the Supreme Court? The vetting process there should be a little bit more critical.
Governor, when we were seeing the Friday arrests and we were talking about Chapter 6 of the Constitution, matters integrity, a lot of critics were coming out and saying whether you're innocent or whether you're guilty, borrow a leaf from what we've seen in Canada, Finland, and America, step aside and let investigations happen. Should the same also be for the judges who are found to be, who are awaiting trial as investigations are happening? Should they also step aside?
Yeah, in Kenya, we've put a lot of, let me call it stumbling blocks. For a judge to step aside, it's a long process because it has to go to the tribunal. So that the process in Kenya is different from other countries. Yeah, in Kenya, the process is the way it is there. It has to go to the president, it has to have all this bureaucracy for it to get where it's supposed to get.
All right.
But in those other regions, it is a direct indicator. If one is even accused to some extent, one steps aside.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Should it need be an initiative, a personal initiative? I have been accused and I'm now doing this on my own volition based on in the Integrity Chapter 6.
Trevor, you may be the only one stepping aside when everybody else is sitting pretty in the office. you see what happens in Africa is that there is what I call informal and formal institutions. Informal institutions is what we believe in traditionally, that I cannot go and steal livestock from him because we come from the same community. That is an informal institution. But stealing livestock from other Kenyans is normal. That is informal. That is still informal. But the formal setup is that stealing any livestock from any part of this country is illegal. Now, if society has not come to the realization that what is informal and what is formal must mesh at some stage, then it will be very hard to invoke Chapter 6. Because it is personal integrity. If you feel that you will still, you are no longer dispensing justice the way you ought to, then it takes your personal integrity. But as the governor said, the due process in this judicial service is very clear. The president will expect him to appoint a tribunal. Upon appointment of a tribunal, the judges shall make the necessary amends in terms of the next move. Okay. But finally, the most important thing is, unless we sensitize our society to make it appear apparently clear that if you are accused of corruption, you are not part of us, and society shuns you as an individual, we are likely to have corruption for many years to come.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen.
There's also an interjection. You realize also in Kenya sometimes, you realize a person just comes from nowhere and accuses somebody. You're so in Kenya sometimes, many times he wants only to fix somebody. But in the developed world, there's a process, you must prove. People are not so much like scooping too low to try only to finish somebody. Yeah, so in Kenya sometimes, that's why we hesitate to move out.
Right. Let me bring your attention to a different story, and we had highlighted earlier. It's the one on the Daily Nation, page 3. Get this, as a country, we only have about 2,000 lions left. And in the next 15 to 20 years, you may not be able to take your child to the national park. Lions will just be another animal that we teach and see on the pictures and on the internet and so forth. So the question here is, and Dr. Richard, allow me to bring you in. As an African continent, are we doing enough when it comes to protecting our wildlife? Not only at government level in terms of making laws that do so, but even at community levels. Like here in Kenya, you see the Maasais are quite protective of even the wild animals as much as they are protective of their sheep and their goats and so forth. So are we doing enough?
Yeah, thank you very much, Zingzi. Well, the continent is doing enough, especially at the policy level, because there have been what is called illegal wildlife policy that has been passed, and in coordination with the African Union and the UN Environment, which has even gone up to the level of the UN Environment Assembly. But when it comes down to the national levels, I think the implementation of this policy is taking steps forward. But the most important thing that we need to understand is that wildlife is actually part of what we call natural capital for the continent, which constitutes not only economic assets, but at the same time the wealth that is actually also being lost in the form of what is called illicit flows, which are costing the continent $60 billion each and every year. So in essence, Africa's development cannot happen when aspects of wildlife, or this illicit wildlife trade that it's happening and the continent is grappling with, is not actually taken into consideration and actually mainstream into the entire continental development. So it begs to look at it from the perspective of synergistic approaches, not considering wildlife as a standalone, but integrating this within the entire national development trajectory.
Right. Dr. Richard, would you say that poaching is a result of Africa's development? The rate that we are growing our wildlife, the rate we're trying to grow also our infrastructure, that the price we have to pay includes poaching?
Well, it must be coordinated and also regulated poaching, because if you are touching species that are almost extinct, and we know that the lion, the king of the jungle, even in extreme drought, it doesn't succumb to eating grass. Now, if it has been extinct and it is the pride of the continent, then it means that we're getting it wrong. And therefore, the regulation, which is actually anchored within this policy, illegal wildlife policy that I mentioned, is what needs to be taken into consideration, and countries have to implement it. Because as I said, Africa's development cannot happen at the expense of its natural capital.
Right.
And in this case, we were already losing 60 billion each and every in what is called illicit flows. And so something needs to be looked into, and this needs to be urgently done.
Yeah. And on a totally different conversation, because you're the expert here when it comes to climate change. You're seeing 300 dead in wake of tropical cyclone Idai in Mozambique and partly in Zimbabwe as well. Are we likely to see more such catastrophic level disasters based on climate change? Is that what the research is saying? Absolutely.
And this African proverb puts it in perspective. If you close your eyes to facts, you will learn through accidents. The science is unequivocal. And the latest science, which is actually conducted by what is called the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is led by the UN, released in December 2018, just a couple of months back, shows that the severity of these events are going to increase, and more so in the African continent. And the latest UN Environment Report, called the Emissions Gap Report, shows that we're not doing enough as a global community. And so what we're going to see is that we're going to see severity in terms of floods, severity in terms of drought. And if nothing is done, this is not only going to be inflicting pain on lives, and it's going to actually curtail Africa's development and reverse the development gains that have actually happened in the past decade.
Right.
So what needs to be done now is that we need to put our house in order. What that means is, if you tell a hungry child that you gave him or her food yesterday, that means nothing to that child today, because fundamental rights are non-negotiable. And so we have then to ensure that we put in place strategies that are not reactive, but strategies that are actually what I call a cocktail of climate risk, which are immediate, medium, and long-term, taken into consideration, because this is the new normal in which we're going to be living with.
All right. Dr. Munang says it's the new normal, and he's speaking about floods, extreme floods and extreme drought. We're taking a short break here on Daybreak. The hashtag is Daybreak at Trevor Mbija at Zinzi K at Citizen TV Kenya. You can text at 2242222 also and send us. You can also call in live 0719777777. Now, after the break, we begin that conversation. And the question we're asking you is, what more can be done to counter hunger? Dr. Munang, who's a climate change expert, says they're going to be both extremes. Floods will be extreme, drought will also be extreme. So we're asking you this morning, what more can be done to counter hunger? This is coming at a time when 13 counties are facing acute starvation. The government says nobody has died out of starvation. The leaders on the ground say there are people who died, and they have the evidence there. Citizen TV has done a spot check, and we can authoritatively confirm that there are people who are surviving on wild fruits as we speak. Relief food is yet to reach them. I want to hear your views. What more can be done to counter hunger? We'll be back in just a bit, right?